Hello, everyone. I'm Jonah Cohen, Camera's Communications Director. Welcome to our webinar series on the Hamas Israel War. We're very fortunate to have Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus with us, the IDF's leading international spokesperson responsible for global media operations. He's kindly given us 25 minutes of his time. He'll speak now for about 5 minutes, followed by 20 minutes of questions. If you'd like to ask a question, please click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and type your question. We have over 1,000 people registered, so we probably won't get to all of your questions, but please do post your thoughts. We want to hear from you. And I'll also be sharing your questions with the IDF's communications team, which is helpful to them. And with that, I'll turn this over to Colonel Conricus. Thank you for joining Camera.
Thank you, Doctor. Pleasure to be here. And I want to say from the beginning, I am a fan of your work. Your organization is one of the most important organizations, and I think the fact that you hold media accountable and you hold their feet to the fire is extremely important in everyday situations, and even more so in times of emergency and war that we find ourselves in. And I really would like to emphasize that and everything that the team does in the US, in Israel, and all over the world. I'll give a short introduction to where we stand, what the situation, the combat situation is. I could do that for hours because there is a lot going on and we are attacked on 3 or 4 fronts, but I will try to keep it short and focused, and then we will do questions. Let's start with the main theater of operations, Gaza. We are attacking in Gaza. That is our state of military operations. We are attacking on the ground and in the air. We have been advancing with ground forces in northern Gaza, making good, steady, and planned progress. We are not rushing, and there's no aim to get to some certain geographical point and place a flag, but we are working methodically in engaging with the enemy, attacking Hamas and its military positions on the ground and below the ground, acting on precise intelligence and generating more intelligence as the battle continues. So far, we have taken more than 50 senior or important Hamas military commanders off the battlefield, and there are reports of hundreds of Hamas militants that have been killed in fighting. We are hard at work in getting evidence out. I know we're in the business of show, don't tell, so we are working on getting information out, pictures and data. It is a chaotic battlefield and it takes time, but hopefully we will have visuals of that. And in general, the story in the south is that we are now in ground operations, urban terrain, difficult, slow, resource intense combat, which we are prepared for. We know that we are in enemy territory, which has been prepared well in advance. All dimensions of warfare are active. So it is air. They use drones and rockets and missiles. It is land, everything on the land, from infantry attacks to anti-tank missiles to IEDs, booby traps, etc. And then underground, the third dimension, which is vast when it comes to Hamas, with an elaborate network of tunnels, defensive tunnels that they have prepared over many, many years. We're talking about hundreds of miles of tunnels underground, which is the backbone of their fighting capability. That is where we will be killing them, and those are the main important assets that we will be attacking. We know that it is a dangerous endeavor, and we are going to take all precautions in order to enhance the chances of troop survivability and minimize the risk of our casualties. Unfortunately, we already have casualties, which is to be expected of this kind of combat, but there's many successes. And the bottom line in Gaza, we are advancing according to plan. I want to say something about the humanitarian situation before I go over to speak about Lebanon and about Yemen and other locations. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is definitely not good, but there is fuel in Gaza. Fuel is stockpiled by Hamas. They control what is left in Gaza, and there is a lot of fuel to run hospitals and essential facilities, including water, desalination, and sewage, etc. The decision is Hamas. and the priorities are Hamas. They are prioritizing their fighting capabilities, rocket launching, the whole defense structure and their attacking capabilities, the tunnels and their fighters. That is what Hamas is prioritizing. In parallel to that, they're running a media campaign using UN institutions, NGOs, and others in order to apply pressure on Israel. Some of that has been working, some of that has not been working. We are pushing back on the false claims regarding fuel and necessities. There is a steady and increasing flow of humanitarian goods facilitated through the US and Egypt, but really run through Egypt, coming into the southern part of Gaza, which is the safer, not safe, safer place to be in Gaza. There's a humanitarian designated zone in a place called El Muassi, which is where goods are going and where the civilian population should be. And worth to note is that we have been calling on the local population in the north to evacuate for 2 weeks. Any and every casualty that happens now is first and foremost a result of not heeding that warning, and second, the fact that all of Hamas infrastructure and their whole tactics and strategy of operations is that they embed themselves within the civilians, and they use everything civilian that is supposed to be protected and not part of combat. They use all of that for their combat needs. Both things are war crimes, contrary to humanitarian law and in direct violation. In addition to that, more than 8,000 rockets have been fired at Israel. We tend not to speak about it because that's something that we've grown accustomed to, and there are not, thankfully, many casualties, but 8,000 rockets indiscriminately fired at our civilians and cities, and thanks God and Congress and military industries for developing the Iron Dome and for replenishing the Iron Dome. That saves lives. Let's speak about what could become the main theater of operations and is extremely dangerous. Hezbollah is constantly upping the ante, escalating. Today was a significant escalation done by Hezbollah. They fired rockets and different types of armaments further down south into Israel, still in northern Israel, but they definitely enhanced the scope of their attacks. We responded in kind, and we have struck more significant military infrastructure belonging to Hezbollah, not only along the line of contact, but other facilities as well. And what we're seeing is Hezbollah walking a very, very thin and dangerous line, which can have possible catastrophic consequences for the state of Lebanon and for the people who live in Lebanon. The message to Lebanon is it really worth it to jeopardize what's left of Lebanese prosperity and sovereignty for the sake of a bunch of terrorists in Gaza? It's an absurd situation where Iran and its proxies are pushing and escalating the situation. We see that in the north, where we are deployed in significant capabilities currently, and I emphasize currently, in a defensive and responsive posture. But that is definitely something that is being evaluated constantly based on or looking at the amount and severity of attacks that Hezbollah is fielding. And of course, last front or last area is our aerial attempts fired from Yemen by the Houthis towards Israel, cruise missiles, long-range drones. Several attempts have been made. Dozens have been made to fire these long-range strategic missiles and drones towards Eilat. All of them have been successful and intercepted by the Israeli Air Force, the first live interception of the Arrow system, and also by the F-35I Adir plane that has been successful, and other measures. So we are monitoring that very closely. And it is also a level of joint cooperation with the US. Previously, 2 weeks ago, the USS Carney intercepted other incoming missiles before they were able to come to Israel. So to summarize, ongoing war on one front, active full-scale operations. Second front, which could become the main front, that is the north. We have said clearly that we are not interested in a war. Definitely not at this time, but we are defending ourselves, and if it will be forced upon us, we will respond. And just for reference, for any of the enemies listening or that will listen, we are deploying less than half of the capabilities of the Air Force. The rest of the Air Force is locked, loaded, ready to go, bombs on the planes, and waiting for orders to strike, and that won't be the areas close to the border. And that is a clear message to Hezbollah and their Iranian masters. I think that summarizes the situation. Last thing is also that we constantly monitor the situation in Judea and Samaria. We are aware of attempts by Hamas to escalate the situation there. We're taking active preventive measures, arresting and intercepting both active terrorist cells and Hamas leadership in Judea and Samaria. Some people refer to it still as the West Bank, but we call it Judea and Samaria. So far that situation is under control, but of course needs to be monitored. Last thing related to media, of course, massive interest and very high visibility. Lots of efforts here by the IDF spokesperson unit and everything official in Israel, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I think are doing a very good job this time of getting information out and fighting the good fight. I won't speak about what we are doing, but we are definitely active and trying to take the initiative to respond to events and to debunk lies, including the situation with the Al Ahli hospital and many others. So I went a little bit longer than what I planned, Doctor, but now I've completed and happy to take questions.
Thank you, sir. We have about 14 minutes left for questions. We've got a lot of interesting ones here. Let's start with one that I think is on the top of everyone's mind. What can you tell us in general about the hostages, their condition, location, chances of rescuing them? And in particular, can you walk us through how the IDF managed to rescue 19-year-old hostage Ori Magidish?
Yes, I should have mentioned that before, obviously, because it is a key issue. It is a commitment of ours to get all of the hostages back. Currently, we are speaking about 240. Just to explain that the number has been fluctuating, not because Hamas is taking more hostages, but because we're doing extensive forensic work and we're able to move people, names from one column of missing or dead to taken hostage, and some are confirmed dead when we find body parts. It was a massacre on October the 7th, and therefore we are still working with the best pathologists in order to identify people remains. We have more than 100 bodies that are still unconfirmed, and that's why the number is still moving. We have troops on the ground in Gaza, and our ability to successfully rescue Private Ori Magidish was a special operation, joint IDF, ISA, Shabak, based on lots of intelligence, tremendous efforts, and quite daring special operations to go into Gaza where she was held and to get her out. She is home and safe and well with her family. She has provided very valuable intelligence for future operations. I won't go into those details, but I can just say that she has provided valuable intelligence and that we are hard at work to do that and much, much more. We understand that it's only a quick burst of light in a sea of darkness. We're happy that Ori is home, but we want all of the 240 Israelis held, many of them alive, some of them not alive. Their bodies are being held. We want all of them home, repatriated into Israel. Because of the sensitivity, I can't say more than that, but we are focusing intelligence, special forces, and lots of brain power and combat power into getting them back. And the ground operations create friction. Friction creates intelligence and creates opportunities, and that is also what we're looking for.
Thank you. We have someone who wrote this. Hamas's brutality on October 7th was so cruel and so sadistic that it's hard for ordinary people to fathom their intentions. What were they hoping to achieve with such cruelty and carnage? Was the sadism an end in itself, or were they trying to provoke a real war? And if so, how come? Why now?
Excellent question. On the why now, I would assess, and this is only me assessing, that they thought that it would be an opportune time to attack Israel for various reasons that I'm not going to go into because I don't want to get, I'm not going to go into it, but I will say that they probably assessed that it was a good time to do it. They have been planning this for a long time. This isn't something new, but the decision about the timing of the attack was, of course, something that they made in real time. Unfortunately, a very well planned and executed sadistic military operation where it was clear from the beginning that the aim was to go into communities, kill civilians, take hostages, and kill as many Israelis as possible. If you haven't seen it yet, I urge you to watch the amount of weapons and the quality of weapons that they brought with them. Absolutely phenomenal and unbelievable, the amount of weapons that they took with them. Military grade standard weapons that clearly indicates how serious this effort was. And it indicates many other things, also their international ties and their funding. Bottom line, I don't know, and it's difficult to assess what they thought would come out of it. And if they assess that they would wreak havoc upon themselves and open the floodgates of hell on Gaza and on Hamas. I don't know if they did so. I have heard, and if you haven't seen the memory intercept of one of the last interviews of Abu Hamza, Abu Ahmed, I think it was, I tweeted it as well. I tweeted and said famous last words of one of the senior Hamas people, where he says clearly, we will do this again and again and again, and our goal is to annihilate Israel. They for some reason they think that that is achievable, and we have to take our enemies seriously. We have to take their word for it and not belittle what they're saying, as crazy as it may sound. That is exactly what we're doing now. We're taking their word for it and making sure that they will never ever have the ability to implement it.
We have someone here wondering whether it's possible the October 7th massacre was part of a larger strategy to get Israel focused on Gaza while Hezbollah and Iran attack on other fronts. Does Israel have the resources to fight on multiple fronts without the help of the United States and other allies?
The short answer is yes, but I'll have to caveat that. And of course, without American supplies, bombs, interceptors, etc., that would be a different ballgame. So yes, we have the weapons, the personnel, the intelligence, the hardware, and most importantly, the spirit and fighting will to do so. And we will defend ourselves and defeat any enemy in the region, near or far, that attacks or threatens us. And we will do it according to our strategic priorities and according to our general posture. Definitely, yes, clear, yes, that this could be part of the Iranian axis, the plan to engulf Israel and to attack it from various fronts. We are seeing that as we are fighting now, as I've spoken about, south and southeast and north, and also from Syria. So it's clear that that is a very, very vivid option. If it happens, we will be ready for it. And it will be, I think that even the sites of destruction in Gaza that so many people in the world are now very concerned with, the suffering, etc., they will really be miniature versions of what other enemies will face if that level of violence is targeted against us.
Thank you. We have about 5 minutes left. I'll do two more questions. One is, we're now entering a phase where anti-Israel propaganda is claiming that there's no proof for the atrocities committed against Israelis on 10/7. Can the IDF find ways to include quick verification of key facts for the public without compromising intelligence sources? How do we deal with this disturbing misinformation that's out there?
There is, I'm happy to say, excellent international media stories already out there, with gruesome details about the planning and the execution and the aftermath of everything that Hamas did. You only have to look, and it's from what we would call credible news sources. I know that that's a questionable statement within this room here, but let's call them credible news sources, and excellent stories done that really delineate and expose clearly how Hamas planned this, what they did, and the consequences, including the very gory details. So it's out there. You just need to Google it quickly, find it, and amplify it. And it is already out there. And we, of course, we continue to work both with the diplomats and with the media. We are doing constant screenings of our 40-minute horror movie, which is an edited and watered down version of the real horrors that were taken from GoPro cameras that the terrorists had on themselves, obviously for future things that they thought that they would be able to do. And we have shown this to hundreds of journalists in Israel, hundreds of diplomats in Israel, and more than hundreds of diplomats and important people around the world, including in the US. So this is ongoing, but I think that there's, for anybody who has the minimal intellectual integrity, the information is out there, and not only from Israelis saying it, but from non-Israelis covering it. Just find it and amplify.
Okay, perhaps this is the last question. As a communication specialist, what advice can you give people who are trying to explain Israel's case to their local communities? How do you yourself prepare for hostile media encounters?
Great question. I suppose everybody here knows who Richard Kemp is. Colonel Richard Kemp. He has a slogan from his military unit. I always forget the unit, and he'll be angry if he hears that I forgot which unit it was. But his slogan is keep attacking. Always attack, keep attacking. And in this specific situation, I am done apologizing. We are done apologizing for what's happening. We are done apologizing. This attack was brought upon us, and it is our duty to set the record straight with Hamas and to rid southern Israel and all of Israel from this menace, which we cannot live with. Everything that we're doing is according to our values, according to our morals, according to the law of armed conflict, and we are doing what needs to be done, full stop. And I'm simply saying to journalists in the most pleasant and Scandinavian way that I can, but with firm resolution, don't give me nonsense. Listen and see what happened on October the 7th. All of the rest is small details. And don't bring me cry stories about what's happening in Gaza. Focus on where we started and why we're doing what we're doing, and understand that this is an unsustainable situation, and we have absolutely no other choice. We didn't want this war. We didn't ask for it. We don't want to strike through civilian buildings in order to get to the tunnels. We've evacuated the people. We tried to evacuate the people from combat areas. We can only do so much. At the end of the day, we have to fundamentally change the situation, and that is what we're doing. And I think that the most important thing when you address and when you prepare is first and foremost to have your belief, and to understand and to be 100% sure about what it is you're saying. They will always try to destabilize and confront and falsify and get all of you out of balance with all kinds of UN reports and whatever quasi-credible source that they can bring. I always bring it back to why we're doing what we're doing and why this needs to be done. That is what I try to do. And everybody here in the team, in the IDF spokesperson team, that is what we're trying to do. It is difficult. We do feel the strain. We do feel how media are still, as you guys know, poised against us. Biased reporting, knee-jerk responses, and the constant, relentless attempt to blame and pin everything on Israel. We're not going to have it. We are unapologetic in our efforts, and we will continue to be so. We will keep our morals, but we will continue to defend ourselves. And there is no juster cause than the cause that we are now fighting for.
Thank you, sir. I know you're on a tight schedule. Before we wrap up, I just want to express our gratitude to you, Colonel. We're incredibly grateful for your time and for answering so many questions, and really for the example you're setting for all of us as you go into this hostile and biased global media environment that camera is also battling every day. So we understand what you're up against and very much appreciate and respect your service, and we wish you success. We thank you for your time today, and I wish you and your loved ones a good and healthy and safe day. That concludes today's program.